Hello and welcome once again to another... Excuse me a minute. Yeah? For me? Really? Oh, okay. Got a box. I got a delivery. Just bear with me a sec. Oh, it's got bubble wrap. I love bubble wrap. I love bubble wrap. Start the titles. Okay. So today's Doctor Who review for Behind the Box is episode 7 and it is called Kerblam. Yeah, good title. Okay, so what's the plot? So the TARDIS crew are jetting around the universe and they get a teleport post for the Doctor from the Kerblam man, and it's a Fez. We all know about Fezes, don't we? And inside there is a note that says help. So the TARDIS crew follow up on this to the company Kerblam, which is on the moon of Kandoka, and they decide to go and investigate this company to find out what this help note is. And we get down to the planet, we realise that there are 10,000 human workers there because 90% of it is automated. You do the maths. That means there's quite a lot of automation in there if there are 10,000 workers. So we've got different characters that we get introduced to. We've got Judy, who is head of people. We get Dan, played by Lee Mack. For those of you who are not British, Lee Mack is a stand-up comedian and also does some presenting and a little bit of acting too on television, mostly comedy. We've got Mr. Slade. He's the director or administrator for this company. He's the kind of head honcho of the business. We get introduced to Kira, who works in the packing department, and Charlie, who's a cleaner. And there's a bit of a crush between those two characters. And we find out that people are going missing. So this is a story which is a bit of a mystery box in itself. The whole thing ties together quite nicely. So they decide they're going to investigate, and lots of questions are flying around, like why is this happening, who's gone missing, how did it happen, lots of different questions that they're asking, and they get split up because they're tagged, and the tag decides what job they do depending on what colour they are. The Doctor wants to get down to the packing department, so she switches with Graham, and poor old Graham ends up being a cleaner. Makes you wonder that when they scanned the Doctor, why on earth they thought the Doctor was going to be a cleaner, but there you go. Having explained some of the plot, actually looking at the plot as a whole, it's actually rather good. It's rather engaging, keeps you guessing all the way through and keeps you intrigued, and you follow the story along at quite a pace actually in this one. There is a massive flaw in the story, but we'll get to that later. The side characters are quite interesting this time. There's just enough about them to keep the story going. They're giving them the guided tour and the introduction. That's a good way of using exposition. It works really well. Lots of different themes covered in this episode. You've got corporate business, thinking about companies like Amazon. We get a mystery in this story. We've had that before in Doctor Who. It's not a unique idea, but still it's a good theme for this particular story. We even cover terrorism in this story as well, as we'll come back to later on, and we get issues with different themes on slave working, the use of unions, how automation is taking over people's jobs, that sort of thing is covered in it. So again, we're getting this kind of social, political element that we're getting quite consistently from Doctor Who now in this series. They are really making a lot of statements. The script as far as I'm concerned, is probably the best so far. If you take the historicals and put them to one side for a moment, because as I said before in those are very good dramas and in themselves are excellent. But this being more sort of science fiction mystery box type of story, it does feel more like a proper Doctor Who story. What is a proper Doctor Who story? Who knows? That's just my opinion. The whole cast this week are much better. It actually flows really well. There are a couple of odd bits that you could nitpick at, but generally it's well balanced. We've got lots for them to interact and do, even when they split up. And it does actually make the story move along a lot better. It doesn't feel rushed. It feels like it's got the right amount of time to tell this particular story. There was a nice mention of a David Tennant story there, if you noticed, when she brought up Agatha Christie, when she mentioned about a wasp. Of course, the story being Unicorn and the Wasp from David Tennant's final series. Sticking with Jodie Whittaker, in this episode, she actually feels doctorish. You really get a sense in this one that she's nailed it, she's got it now, and for me, I really did warm to her in this episode. I've liked her all the way through. I felt the scripts were letting her down and that she was really trying to find her way through. This one feels like that it got it right. The speech that she does towards the end is what I would call her Zygon moment. If you remember Peter Capaldi's war speech with the Zygons, that's the kind of level you're on here. It's probably not as good as that speech, but that's the essence of that particular speech. She stands there and she makes a point to the character and tells him all about how love is important and what he's doing is wrong and why it's wrong, and all the elements that are involved in that. She really absolutely nails it. So she needs more of these. They need to write a lot more speeches like that, and I think that would convince people that she's the right woman for the job. I still think that the Sonic is a little bit overused. Okay, we've still got the waving of it. It was a bit more Tennant-ish this week. It wasn't quite Harry Potter-ish, but it's still a little bit overplayed, I think. But I would really love for somebody to write into the script to actually kill off the sonic screwdriver. You may not agree with that. Tell me in the comments if you disagree with that. I just think that the Sonic has had its day. Okay, we've got a bit of a love story this week between Charlie and Kira, and there's only a little bit of it. It could have been a little bit longer, but I suppose the runtime was trying to focus on so many different things. It didn't give it enough weight, I don't think. But at least you got the essence of it, and you knew how much she actually meant to Charlie. The twist is good that Charlie is, spoilers, Charlie is the bad guy in all of this. Or is he a bad guy? You decide. Because there's an old adage that every terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So you will decide whether you think he's a terrorist or a freedom fighter, or what his actual motivation behind it is, and whether it's justified. Some nice CGI in this one. We've got the conveyor belt, which you can see is completely CGI, and it's a good little scene. It's better than having a running up and down corridors, which we know Chibnall doesn't like, apparently. But the CGI pacing of it is really, really good, and you get the feeling that it kind of harkens back to things like Monsters Inc., you know, the doors that are all hanging in the conveyor belts where they're jumping from door to door. It's got that kind of feel to it, and it gives it scope as well. It gives it scale. It makes the whole, because I mean this whole planet is basically this business, so it does give it scale. We get a better look at the TARDIS this week. We're getting more and more peaks of it every week, and we get it right at the beginning of the story, so the action is moving quite quickly, and they're trying to chase this parcel that's coming in, or avoid it, I think, because they think it's chasing them at first. So we get more look at the inside of the TARDIS this time, and it still feels cold and unlived in. I can't quite put my finger on what's wrong here, but whether it's the lighting or the way it's used or the way it's filmed, it just feels odd. Now this director this week had more of a chance to kind of back off in a couple of shots, so you got a bit more feeling of the size of it. It still feels small, and I can't imagine the characters living in this space. The other TARDISes we've seen, you get a feeling that the space is lived in. This doesn't feel lived in at all. Now we come to the elephant in the room. The exploding bubble wrap. No, no, no. Why do I say that? Because it seemed like a good idea, doesn't it? You know, that, this is what's killing them all off. It's not the robots. What a beautiful twist. Well, yes, it is a beautiful twist, because we all thought the robots were killing everybody off. And I liked that, and it did take me by surprise. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this doesn't work. The thing about bubble wrap is you cannot resist popping it. Now, I know that was the crux of the story, that you've got, when it's sent out, he knew that everybody would pop it. But surely, wouldn't somebody else have popped it as well? So Ryan had some of the bubble wrap from the box. Now, you're not telling me that he would not have popped one of those bubbles. He would have done. You would, I would. Everybody, when they get hold of bubble wrap, it is infectious. So if you look at Lee Mack's character, so he went off to fetch a delivery down there. He must have popped that bubble wrap. He'd never done that before. He'd never done that with a group of people who were working in there. And also, bubble wrap is delivered on a big roll, and you have to cut it. And you're telling me that when it was cut, it's never cut through a bubble and it wouldn't have exploded? And also, the investigation of the company. No CCTV, nobody could see what was happening. In a company like that, where they've got them so locked down like slaves, they haven't got CCTV monitoring the place. Too many questions there. So that's a shame. But all the other elements are there. So let's give it a score. I'm going to give this one 8 out of 10. And that's a consistent mark through this series, so that's really good. It's a classic Doctor Who story. It may not be the best story in the world, but it's a good one. So, there we have it. That's my review of Kerblam. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Did you think it was a good story? Do you think it could have been better? Is this your favourite or not your favourite? Tell me about it in the comments. I want to hear from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you all again very soon.